So when we returned to building 1, the damage was to, where the plane entered, was on one face. But it appears that the building began to collapse somewhere in the middle or on the other face. In fact, the first notice of failure appears to be the television antenna on top coming down into the building. Now, that television antenna was pretty strongly attached to the building. Back to the PG&E building in San Francisco. It has a mast on the top of it. It's about 75 feet tall. It was put up there to support microwave towers. Microwave towers are subject to vibration, and the dishes need to be fairly stable in order to maintain a consistent signal from tower to tower. This was television broadcast, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were microwave dishes up there as well for communication. That mast, those towers were set up there to not vibrate at all. And yet that was the first part, the visible part that's coming down. It's coming down in the middle of the building where the building is mostly holes for elevators and duct shafts and pipe shafts and that sort of thing. There's nothing in the middle of the building to burn. How did that steel soften enough to allow the television mast to sink almost straight down into the building, and then the building began to collapse from where the plane entered straight down? Keeping in mind, if this is a pancake effect, it's going to come down in a staccato fashion, bang, 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 as it hits each floor. You're going to get puffs of debris as it hits each floor. You're not going to get billowing. The concrete is solid. It's going to be pulverized and you get a puff. It's not going to be, there's not a lot of smoke because there's almost no fire up there as it comes down. In fact, there's no fire once you get below the impact zone. Yet they continue to accelerate as they come down. And we get to the bottom and there are no major steel columns in the middle of the building still standing that I could see. Maybe an oddball here or there, but nothing compared to the amount of steel that's in fact in the middle of one of these buildings. Next, when we talk about Building 7, Building 7 is a little different. It's fundamentally a more regular design, a more conventional design with beams and columns in a regular pattern. There are some anomalies, however. There are some long span girders spanning over a consolidated Edison vault of some sort at the lower level, or building, transformer vault probably at a lower level. I'm not sure exactly what it was. But it's not unusual to have transfer girders in the lower levels of tall buildings. They were only under one portion, supporting one portion of the building, from what I understand, and not necessarily connected from some diagrams I've seen. Our building wasn't hit by a plane, but it burned for a long time. Now, where did the fuel come from? Well, we're told that there were fuel tanks on, I think, the 7th or 8th floor or so to run emergency generators. I can't for the life of me believe why anyone would put enough fuel in a high-rise building to run emergency generators, at least enough fuel to burn more than 10 minutes. Those buildings burn 6 hours. First of all, I don't understand why anyone would put that much fuel inside a high-rise building, regardless. But also, apparently, the fuel wasn't according to the NIST study, wasn't a contributing factor to the collapse. Their theory is office furnishings. A normal office fire is going to burn for 20, 30 minutes, hour maybe, depending on how much of it stuff there is, how much foam there is and cushions and stuff. It's not going to burn 6 hours. Well, the photos don't seem to show that the building was burning all over. The photos that I've seen seem to indicate that that there were isolated fires scattered around the building and not the whole building burning. NIST would have us to believe that these were was a typical office fire, scattered office fires, if you will, that brought this building down, that burned for a period of 6 hours or so. Typical office furnishings and isolated office furnishings would burn for 20, 30 minutes or so and spread over time and burn out in one area, begin to burn more in another area as the fire spread. In a building like this, it would have, for it to have burned 6 hours, it would have had to burn through quite a number of floors. It would have been visible on the outside as the fire leapt from floor to floor going up, as it has been in other buildings, like First Interstate Tower and when it burned in Los Angeles. That doesn't seem to be the case with the Building 7. It appears in watching the videos that there were isolated fires on several floors, but they weren't leaping up the outside of the building. There was a great deal of concentration of smoke going up one face of the building, but I don't believe, I didn't see any fire or indication of fire going up there. I just saw smoke, and it all appeared to be coming pretty much from the same generalized location in the building. So where did the fuel come from to keep those fires going for 6 hours? And how did they manage to get the building heated evenly enough for it to collapse? And I believe that building, other than the first second when it was first getting started, once into the collapse, it appears to fall at free fall speed. Where was the resistance of the columns? Where were they? Once this building begins to break, we see a couple of things as we watch it. On both the left hand and right hand faces of the building we're watching in the videos, there are about one column bay in from the outside end bay. There's the windows are blown out and there's smoke or debris or something coming out in a fairly vertical pattern, coming down fairly far on the building face. The building shifts. There's a visible shift at the top if you're watching it, and that lasts about a second, and then it begins to fall with the speed of gravity, acceleration of gravity. The building is accelerating as it comes down. There's no resistance until the building gets down maybe halfway and finally is beginning to encounter maybe some of its own debris lower down in the building. But it still comes to the ground in a very short order. And when it's all finished, the outside walls from the lower floors are piled one on top of the other right in the middle of the building. Just like a house of cards if it were coming down. I find that a little hard to believe. If this building were to have collapsed due to fire, I would have expected it to behave much more like a fire in your fireplace. If you build a fire in your fireplace and you light it, as it burns and the heat begins to build, you'll get a localized failure here and then a localized failure there, and the logs will shift a little and shift around, and over time all of the logs will become fully engulfed in flame and you'll get hot in the middle, and they'll slowly burn themselves away until ultimately you get a total collapse. But the fire is fully engulfing and involving all of the wood that's left in the fireplace. You've had the heat, had the surrounding fireplace to contain the heat, and it's being fed oxygen, obviously, from the face. And you will get a total instantaneous collapse. Keep this in mind. That's wood burning in a fireplace, or wood burning in a wood frame building. It's not steel, which doesn't burn, especially steel that is covered in fireproofing. There's no indication that I've seen that indicates the fireproofing was removed from Building 7. Further, since the mid-'60s, I've tried to follow high-rise fires because they're something we worry a lot about as we design these buildings. And I'm not aware of any high-rise building that have come down as a result of fires. I'm aware of some concrete buildings that have come down as a result of earthquakes or tipped over or done other things. But I'm not aware of a steel building that has come down by fire. Even though we've had some of these fires have been much hotter much longer lasting. I mean, the first interstate fire was very hot in Los Angeles, as a high-rise fire goes. I can't remember even a partial collapse in any of these buildings that I've watched over the years. High-rise buildings. I started in San Francisco doing high-rise buildings because that was a special interest of mine. I paid close attention to them for the last 45 years, and I think that's probably why I'm still interested in what happened at the World Trade Center. Something about the way those buildings came down doesn't add up in my mind. I think what's needed next is a call for some peer review papers, some further studies, some further theories of what may have happened, some further hypotheses, if you will. I think that should be a public worldwide calling for that kind of information from experts in the field on all aspects of the design and construction of high-rise steel frame buildings. They should be given time to seriously prepare responses. 2 years would be reasonable, I would think. After which time, all of the new thoughts, all of the new hypotheses, all of the new information that has been developed subsequent to the final report, or even that report itself, should be re-examined again and in detail and carefully responded to. There was a lot of good work that I've seen in what few things I've seen in this. I haven't read all of it by any stretch of the imagination, but I have read some of it. And some of the conclusions and some of the seem on first brush to me to make some sense. But when you look at the whole, it's when it begins to fall apart. How can those steel columns, the massive steel columns that they are, supporting that weight of that building, virtually disappear? Why aren't they poking up straight out of that rubble at the bottom of the building? The floors all weigh the same, every one of them, from bottom to top. We're not increasing the weight of the floors. We're increasing, getting more and more floors coming down, if you will, if it's a pancake effect. But they're punching through. The columns are punching through them. They're all shear. Those beams will shear as they come to the columns before they'll tear off and twist and break apart the steel columns themselves. Where are they? They were in the molten mess at the bottom. So what I'm looking for is a new investigation. There may be some, well, let's call it a new investigation where all of the original information and tests and hypotheses are re-examined, as well as the ones that have surfaced since, the new ones, including the allegations of controlled demolition. There have been a lot of published tests and reports on the possibility of controlled demolition of these buildings, and I think they should be carefully considered. I think that and all other hypotheses that make sense. There will be some that may not make sense, but for the sake of argument, I think we ought to examine all of them. I mean, at this point, let's take the time to do it right and get the record right. I signed the petition for architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth because I felt it was an organization trying to get at the truth of what in fact actually happened, what brought those buildings down. I didn't feel, in looking at it and reading the information from the organization, that it was a conspiracy theory of advocating any conspiracy theory of any nature. I don't want to be involved in conspiracy theories. There are lots of them. They can go on. We can speculate on that forever. What we really need to know is how those buildings came down.